Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Deanna. We're the Maladroit Mamas.
Life for us is momming, home educating, and procrastinating on everything from grading algebra to cleaning the moldy leftovers in the fridge. And that is both a blessing and a curse.
And we want you to embrace the worst life too. Today, we're continuing our conversation with Christina, my niece-in-law, but she's a friend. And she's our public school teacher, so we have some more questions for her today. So welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll get going in just a minute.
The 2019-2020 school year was difficult for everybody, and people were thrust into these murky waters that no one knows how to navigate, and we touched on some of that. But we also, on my Facebook page, I asked people for specific questions that they would ask a public school teacher if they had the opportunity. So I'm going to read some of these questions if you don't mind answering them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll do my best.
All right. So how are you setting up your virtual classrooms, or your virtual classroom, I guess, to facilitate engagement?
So when Deanna had shared with me this question, and I was thinking about it, one of the things that I really came to, I guess, understand was that I think we're all kind of having a paradigm shift, because I distinctly remember, a former principal of mine saying something along the lines of, we were struggling with, student engagement, struggling with, getting parents on board and all that kind of stuff. And he sort of said, we can only control what we can control. And for us, that was what happens in the building 8:30 to 4.
Right.
Well, now we don't have that. And so I think it's this paradigm shift of how do we get the kids engaged when we can't physically, require them to be somewhere. So I think for me, whenever I think about increasing student engagement, it's just how do I get the kid to want to show up, because we are continuing to video conference next year, and we're doing it far more frequently. And so, as I think about how do I get a kid to show up, I think one of my strengths as a teacher has always been my personal relationship with them. I'm very open to being a real person with them, to being vulnerable, to sharing, parts of my life, and not just being, a distant person that's there to give them knowledge. And so something that I would do in my classroom physically was, in our room, the warm-up every day was actually just a personal kind of journal prompt kind of thing. Like on Thursdays, it was always something that you were thankful for. On Fridays, it was something that you're doing fun, and everybody was free to come up and write on the board, which middle schoolers love to write on the board. And so, especially when it was something that was not specifically, curriculum driven. And I would always share too, and I had done some of that in my online classroom last year, and I think I have a plan for kind of amping up just our ability to share with each other and kind of build that community that even though we're not physically together, we can still get to know each other. One thing that we had going for us last year was my students online were all students I knew. I had long relationships with many of them, and then this time around I'm going to have brand new sixth graders that have never met me in person. And so I think going above and beyond to kind of make those personal connections is going to be really important. And then I think the other piece is that I'm going to try to make everything as just driven by the kind of music for me that the students are interested in. There's a lot of ways to teach music, and it doesn't have to be 18th century European composers. Rehearsing in a choral fashion does not work on video conferencing, and so we're kind of taking a different spin. But even last spring, I did a lot of singing for them and representing musical vocabulary and different things, but using the kind of music that they're interested in. And I think the assignments are going to be much more driven by again, the kind of music that they liked. I attended a conference this summer, and I haven't exactly decided what I'm going to do, but there were lots of ideas for, creating background loops and making your own compositions, doing a masked singer kind of, video project.
I imagine a lot of the kids would be really into that.
Yeah. So, we're just gonna try and meet them where they are, and just try to do something that makes them want to show up when it's their their time, because I don't know if we'll discuss this later, but I think especially the age group that I am teaching, I think a lot of them are probably going to be responsible for themselves to get logged on. And so I think just that extra element of wanting to show
To
up
actually get them to the computer
and
yeah.
you know, put aside whatever else they would
yeah.
prefer to be doing and actually show up. I think,
Right.
you know, those are the kinds of things that we're going to have to do.
Yeah.
All right, next question. As a mandated reporter, do you find that you are experiencing both more alarm over your students' needs being met and being given less opportunity and resources to intervene? Now, that was a very wordy question to just ask specifically about child abuse, because teachers are mandated to report any suspicion of child abuse. So if they're home all day, obviously teachers won't have as many opportunities to see signs of that happening. So,
sure. So whenever I read that question, the first thing I thought was I would really truly have no idea, because most of my students, I did not see their face after March 13th.
right.
And so, you know, and it's a tricky thing, because I think as we move forward, a lot of teachers have had a lot of concerns about, you know, as we video conference, can we make them show their faces? And sort of the complicated answer is that there are students of ours who are living in hotels. There are students who are living in very poor conditions of which they are deeply ashamed of. And so how far do you push a child to make themselves visible to a classroom of other students?
Okay.
At the same time, I can't engage with you if I can't see you. I can't see if you're okay. I can't see if you are, you know, socially, emotionally well if you don't engage. And so I think there's a really big tension. I know our school is really amping up their access to our counselor, but again, that's virtual only. And so, you know, our counselor can make individual appointments with students where they can video conference directly with her and hopefully get some support. But it's really challenging. I mean, we definitely had students that we did not see or hear from, or even complete assignments after March 13. And so, you know, that's really challenging to you know how they are doing. And I know that we did try, and as we were video conferencing with students, you know, specifically call on students, at least, you know, try and hear their voice if they actually were on the other side of their device and had not just, you know, connected to the conference and walked away, because that definitely did happen as well.
I had a friend who's a public school teacher tell me that that she could see one of her students playing video games, and she had to call on the student by name and say, would you mind, you know, taking some time to engage your classmates? And then she saw the mom's arm just reach over and grab the remote from her hand.
Well, yes, for sure. And I will also say, you know, one of the challenges with video conferencing is the students have to be muted to really be able to hear anything that's presented or to watch any videos, because there's just, they cut each other out as you hear.
Yeah.
So you can't even hear, you know, ambient noise. You can't hear if a child's being yelled at by their parent. You can't hear, you know, any of those kinds of things. So I for sure think it is, you know, much more difficult. And I don't really know what else we can do if we can't be, you know, physically. And I come back to that piece of, should we make them show their faces? Can we make them show their faces? Does that violate their privacy rights?
Right. It's really tricky.
It is a tricky
So I'm only familiar with Zoom because that's what platform our homeschool community moved to when all of this went down. And so on Zoom, they have an option for like a backdrop, so you can still see their face, but not see everything else behind them. I don't know what platform you use, but is there an option for that?
Well, so we used Zoom last year. Interestingly enough, you have to have a certain level of device to be able to use the virtual backgrounds, and the school issued iPads were not new enough. So that was not an option that was available. Next year, they have gone away from Zoom and we're using Google Meet. And so we're in the process of playing around with that and seeing what we are able to do and to kind of see the differences between the two. And I don't think there's a virtual background option, but I'd say that not having really specifically looked for it.
Okay. So, well, I'm just thinking like, well, again, I don't know if legally you could force kids to show their faces, but like a virtual drop back would be like a good solution to not seeing everything that's going on behind them.
Sure.
To be able to see them.
Absolutely.
All right, we're winding down to our last couple of questions. What can I, as a parent, do in order to make an already stressful year a little less stressful for you?
I think the thing that I keep coming back to is that I think regardless of how your child is educated, I think the value that your child will place in education is based on what value the parents put in education. I think no matter what the setting is. And so I think the way that we talk to our kids about the decisions that are being made on their behalf is just really, really crucial, because I mean, I can tell you at the middle schoolers, they very rarely have their own opinions. They parrot back, what they hear from their parents.
Definitely.
And so if if the words that are being shared with our students are, this is dumb, your teachers aren't doing anything, this is a bunch of crap, I don't want to do this.
That's really damaging.
That will be their approach to their education.
Right.
And maybe this is harsher than it needs to be, but last spring I felt like the lesson that we taught a lot of our students is that when things are difficult, we give up. Because I feel like that was a lot of what ended up happening. And I understand that there's a myriad of reasons that led to that. But, I think as awful as it is, what a great opportunity to build resiliency in our students and our kids, our personal children, to teach them that this is not ideal, but that does not mean that we give up. This is not ideal, but it does not mean it's all bad. And in a lot of cases, I think it felt last spring, this is a short-term thing. This fall, it could be longer than the fall. And so, trying to help our students to understand the importance of what they're doing and valuing what they are doing and valuing the time that they're putting into it, even if it feels weird, even if it's not what they want to do.
All right, so that's it for our interview with Christina and these 2 episodes, and we want to thank you for being with us.
Thank you for
very
having
much.
me.
It's been great. And we want you to remember to embrace the worst life.